Hi folks, hope you're in cold Thursday afternoon. I was planning to wash the bike today, but I just couldn't be bothered. And then I thought about, there's a project that I've been putting off for about a week or so now, which I'll talk about in just a couple of minutes time, that I'm going to have a go at. And it could all end in tears, but as always you'll get to see it all on video. Before I got into that though, just one thing I'd thought about buying was getting some earplugs. It wasn't such an issue, I think, as I first got the bike, because I was doing much shorter rides really, probably half an hour, 45 minutes, but been pushing the rides out now maybe over an hour, maybe even up to 2 hours in some cases, and was conscious as well that you can suffer, you can end up with tinnitus unless you do protect your hearing. So I watched a number of videos on earplugs and seen various plugs out there. And I finally plugged for these made by Sonica. So as always, when I'm buying something from the bike, spending my hard-earned money, I try to put in practice what I train my my project management delegates to think about, which is to consider the requirement first of all. What job do you want it to do for you? So obviously I want it to suppress the noise and protect my hearing. They've got to be comfortable. I listen to music as well, as you know, when I'm riding along, so I've got to be able to hear my music through them, so I don't want them to completely suppress all the sound. So I had experimented with some of the sort of foam type earplugs, which you sort of screw up and stick down your ears, but they muffled the sound too much, so I didn't really get on with those, I must be honest, although it was only a couple of quid just to sort of try that experiment out, so that was worth it. And the other thing was, I didn't want to lose them as well. You do hear stories about people sort of spending 20 quid or so on these sort of earplugs, and then you drop them on the floor and you can't find them. So I like the idea of some little sort of storage container to come with it. And I think with a lot of these earplugs, particularly the motorcycle earplugs, you either don't get this, or you get one that's in a funny shape that you stick a credit card in, for example, which who'd want to do that? And the second thing is that for me it's got to be mobile, it's got to be reasonably robust, got to be to hand. So with these Sonica plugs, they're actually designed for those who go clubbing, which is something I haven't done for an awful long time now. It was probably people in flared trousers and penny round shirts who did that back in the 1970s. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? So what appealed to me about these was I checked out on Amazon, and with these Sonica earplugs, they are very, very soft actually, and they're actually designed for people who go clubbing, but they've got the sort of usual design where you've got the sort of sound filter in there, but also they are extremely comfortable. I've got to say they are quite soft, and a lot of the feedback really was about the fact that people who do go nightclubbing, people who work in nightclubs, bar staff and so forth, can actually wear these through a whole shift and not sort of suffer any discomfort. So I've been wearing these the last few days. I can still hear my music. They seem to keep the worst of the noise out. So for me, that's a hit. So I would recommend those if you are looking for something to protect your ears. And obviously, as always, if you've got a better idea, you've got a different approach to that, then let's have that debate in the comments column. Okay, so that's the first bit of what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so the second part of of today's film really is about the sound quality of my Scala Rider QZ. So on a previous review a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this in reasonable level of depth, and particularly how it works, what its strengths were, what its weaknesses were, but also how it interacts with the Sat-Nav 6 in my case on my BMW 1200 RT. And generally speaking, I've got to say I've been satisfied with the Scala Rider QZ. I'm not one who needs to be able to link to other motorcyclists on the road. I don't as yet ride in groups. So for me, it's just a question of being able to listen to the Sat-Nav. Maybe receive the occasional phone call on a sort of an ad hoc type basis, although it's not something that I'm particularly I'm particularly keen on. But also, I think for me, a lot of what it's about is actually listening to music or maybe podcasts and things like that. So, as a Christian, I actually listen to quite a lot of Bible teaching on my when I'm actually riding around in the car. So there's no reason why I can't do that on the road either, really. So anything just to sort of keep my mind active. So for me. One of the shortcomings of the Scala Rider QZ is the sound quality. So I'm not what you call an audiophile. I don't sort of spend thousands of pounds on stereos, but I do appreciate a good sound. And if I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this thing here, then actually I want to be able to listen to decent quality sound. And I've got to say, the earplugs, the earphones that you actually get on these, which as usual with this sort of with the the sort of Scalas and all these other kinds of things, are a very, very basic sound. So what I was looking at, and what I've been researching over the last few weeks really, is different means of upgrading that. So today's the day when actually I'm going to dive in, and as I said before, this could all end absolutely horribly, because this has cost £80, and what I've invested in is these, okay, and £30 for some Sony MDR ZX 660 AP clear sound headphones. And the reason I went for those very simply is that the Scala Rider QZ has a 30mm driver. These have a 40mm driver, i.e. that's the diameter of the actual earpiece. Again, it got reasonable reviews, and essentially what I'm going to be doing in a few minutes time before your very eyes is actually hacking these apart and seeking to cannibalise them and actually install them in here. So that'll be the fun bit, so you can see me fail, and either pass or fail I will put this video up. Okay, so I'm now making that commitment to you. So it'll be just like Blue Peter, those of you who are old enough to remember that. Okay, so but the only difference will be there's nothing I prepared earlier. It will all be done live and in front of your very eyes on screen. So here are the actual phones themselves. Okay, you can see it's got this sort of flat lead, and essentially all I want out of these is the actual earpiece. Okay, so we're just to start from the outside of the helmet. So there's the Scala Rider QZ sitting on the side of the helmet, and you can see at the front of the unit is the little lead, which basically plugs into the mouthpiece here. At the back we've got a 3.5mm jack, which we can essentially plug out, which essentially means you can plug anything you want into these, and I guess some people are sort of plugging earbuds into those, but I didn't quite like the idea of actually doing that. And I guess if you do wear those earbuds, then I guess they have the sort of dual effect of means you don't have to put your separate earplugs in. So I guess some people would actually like that kind of thing. And again, I've read of I've seen some of the stuff on YouTube about people actually putting noise cancelling earbuds in those as well. So, but I'm going to go for a slightly different approach. So my aim today is to in essence to be able to access a different set of earpieces. So again, if we actually just look inside the helmet itself, you can actually see my earpieces there, sort of lodged in. They're tiny little things, like the sort of size of a small biscuit. They're quite soft, and on my Shoei Neotech there is actually a recess where these things can actually sit in as well, so they don't press too hard on your ears. Okay, so that's the inside of the helmet. Right, okay, so I guess this job, like any project, breaks down into a number of phases or stages. So for me, phase one is getting the earpieces out of the helmet. I think phase two then will be liberating these Sony headphones of their earpieces. Phase three then will be connecting the Scala Rider lead, the actual little jack plug and lead, to those new earpieces. And I guess stage four then is actually fitting it in, and to all you engineers out there, final stage then is actually commissioning and quality control. We'll see if it works. Okay, so on with phase one then. So let's take the let's remove the Scala Rider. Here we are. First of all, okay, so I'll just take the little gadget off there, the actual Scala Rider itself, and you can see now on the back of the mount is that little plug, and it took me absolutely ages to get this this lead in, so I'm sort of slightly reticent to take this out now, but take it out, it actually has to come. So essentially now what I've got to do is I've got to basically pull this lead out, pull this padding out. There we are, so we've got that off. We can pull that out, and we can now start to track it back into the inside of the helmet there. So there we are, that pulls out. That's That's going to come out from there, that's going to come out from there. It took me ages to do this, to get this back in. I just feel as though making me feel ever so slightly nervous. And then the next thing then is to use the is to pull the Velcro mounts off the inside of the helmet. Okay, so that's one done. Can't see this because it's right inside the helmet and it's impossible to film, unfortunately, but all I'm literally just doing is I've got 2 fingers to actually hold the helmet lining in place, and I've got another 2 fingers just behind the Velcro, and I'm just easing that away. Okay, so there we are. So far so good. As I'm always saying, that's what the man said, wasn't it, as he jumped out the Empire State Building as he passed the 22nd floor. So, okay, so got both sides of this now, which will be fun. Okay, we can put the helmet on one side. Okay, so there we are. This is essentially what we're going to be doing. So we've got the 2 earpieces now. We've got the jack plug and the lead. So the aim then is to actually remove these and replace them with the earpieces from these Sony headphones. I went for Sony. I think you can basically go for anything that you want to go for. I suspect it's just a function of the maximum size that will actually fit in your helmet. And for me, I was thinking probably around about maybe 40mm drive or something like that. You might get a 50mm driver, and I think Torque do one. You can spend about 70 quid on eBay, and you can buy some sort of quite highfalutin ones for about £70. But me being a cheapskate as usual, I just quite fancied a bit of a DIY project. Okay, so that's the next stage. Right, so into phase 2 now. So phase 2 is detaching these wires here from these earpieces, and you can probably see there's a little piece of Velcro, the Velcro that sticks to the inside of your helmet. So we've got to get that off first of all. So there's no particularly easy way to do this, I don't think, apart from just generally easing it away. It's stuck on. Seems to come away relatively easily. Although it's bringing the foam with it, actually, I have to say. Oh well, let's go for it. There we are. Okay, so Velcro off. And we get our first look inside the earpiece there. So that's number 1 done. And number 2. So it's just a bit of brute force, really. I guess if you maybe warmed these up with, let's say, a hairdryer, the glue might soften, might make less of a mess. Okay, but there we are. Okay, so that's come off. And I guess we'll just put those on one side and we'll clean those up later on. Okay. So we've got our 2 earpieces there, tiny little things, as I say, 30cm drivers. Now I think one of the keys now is, before we sort of fire the soldering iron up, is just to maybe get a magnifying glass on that and just make a bit of a note as to which colour goes onto which terminal, because what you want to do when you attach these things back on, I don't know much about electronics and hi-fi, but I've been working with hi-fi long enough to know that you need to get speakers in phase. If you get them in the opposite phase, in other words, if on one speaker you've got the minus and the plus the right way around, and on the other speaker you've got the minus and the plus the right way around, then rather than both speakers working together and actually sort of putting their sort of compressions and contractions in which drive the sound in the right way, you basically get one that comes in and one that goes out, one that comes in and one that goes out. It basically puts the music ever so slightly out of phase, which can actually distort the sound. So this is the next thing to think about. Okay, so I'll just go and get my magnifying glass, and we'll just find it's helpful when I'm doing a job like this where when I take something apart and I'm not quite sure whether I can get it back together again. Just a little tip is to take a photograph, actually. So it's always just a really good point of reference. So get as close up as you can on it. I've saved my bacon a few times. So let's just do that. And we can just get a bit of a glimpse in there. Right, so just one further step is to actually get the speaker unit out from this sort of plastic shroud that it sort of sits in. So I noticed here that the wire is actually looped around like that, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just push that out. I'm just going to push here, and we shall see if that is actually stuck in there. I think it is stuck in there actually. So I might need a little bit of help just to get it out of that. That's all I want the wire anyway, so it's not a major problem. So I shall just leave that there, I think. Right, so removing the wires, so I'm just applying a gentle heat. There we are, there's the first one. And see if we can get the second one off. There we go. First wire removed. Looks like one wire has got a sort of a greenish coating on, the other one is bare actually, looking at that. Okay, so that's wire number one. And again, let's just give ourselves a little bit of room to manoeuvre by pushing this through. Hopefully you can see this. There we are, it's off. There we are, so that's both wires off. So, liberated those now. Little headphones. And of course now the challenge is to take these two wires and attach them to the Sony headphones. So that's the end of phase two. I'm just going to power down the soldering iron. What you can't see here is two black Labradors. They're back to the bike dogs who are very keen to get involved. Right, the next stage now. So next stage is, in theory, that pull these earpieces away and liberate the 40mm driver, the loudspeaker, from each of these. I'm not quite sure what to expect when I get in, so I've got myself a little screwdriver, little crosshead screwdriver, and the Stanley knife as well. So let's just go for it, shall we? See what happens. As I say, this could all end horribly. So you just literally just pull these off actually. So you pull these off, you see they're just sort of tucked behind there, and actually, well, that was easy. So there's one. I might think I'm going to need those later on, so I'll keep hold of those. Try not to damage them. And again, I'll just take the second one off. These aren't glued on, they're just in essence, they just sort of fit behind this sort of little slot, and they actually come away. They come away very easily. So you can see what you're left with now. Okay, is the actual headphone unit themselves. It looks like these are held in with some kind of a screw in there. So, oh, that's good. My screwdriver fits. Yeah, seems to have done something there. So one. And two. And three. So in theory, that's better. Okay, just haven't unscrewed it enough. Right, now you can see from this, let's get my fingers out of the way, there we are, and if I just turn those over, okay, there's our driver. There's obviously a little packing piece there, and we can see where these attach on. So again, what I'm going to do is, just to for my own sanity, I'm going to photograph that. Okay, maybe just a slightly different angle as well. Okay, so we've got a record when it all goes wrong. And we've got our headphone piece. So all we want to do now then is to, in theory, is we're going to solder that, or rather desolder that, and then attach it to the other cable. So before I do that, then I'll just quickly whip out these screws out of the other unit. And the lesson there is the screws are a bit longer than I thought they were. So I think as long as you've got a reasonably small and pointy crosshead screwdriver. Okay, so again, I don't know whether the camera can pick that up, but this was just a cheap set I got in the UK from Maplin's. Cost £4 or £5 just for different sets of screwdrivers, and appears to have done the job quite nicely. There we are, got them both off, sorted. Oh, now this is interesting. Wasn't expecting that. As you can see, we've got all kinds of wires being attached here. What all that's about, no idea. But this, I think, is probably the simple approach. So it looks like if I've got a red wire and the bare wire, if I can remember where those are going, I think I can probably afford to ignore the rest. I've got one wire there that's going off to the end, so I'm just going to ignore that one. And it looks like as long as I can replicate what I've got here, then that in theory should do what I want. So again, just for my own sanity, I'm going to mark using a colour. So that's the red wire there, so I'm just going to mark that terminal there with a little red blob, and I'm going to mark this terminal here with a little red blob, and the copper terminal, copper wire, I'm going to mark with the black. Again, just for my own sanity, and just see whether, hopefully that's actually going to work. It's interesting actually, if you look at the relative size of these drivers, you can see why you get such a better, or in theory why you get such a better quality sound out of this rather than this, because I guess in terms of surface area, this is probably getting on for twice what you've actually got here. So that's a 40mm driver, this is a 30mm driver with a much smaller magnet in this as well. So, but anyway, I've not stuck it back together again yet, so there might be famous last words. Right, so like any good surgeon, let's make a bold first incision. So I'm now going to remove these two wires from this speaker here, which is the right-hand speaker. So the right-hand speaker only has two wires. Well, that doesn't seem to be working for some reason, so let's try a slightly different approach. Not sure why it won't desolder, but let's snip them off instead, shall we? Right, the deed is done. So, the first speaker is removed, that's the right hand speaker. So I'm just going to put an R on there, just so I remember. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to put a left on there, so I remember that one. Now the slight conundrum here, of course, is what do all these other wires do? No idea is the answer. I guess they got something to do with the fact that you can connect this to a smartphone. That I'm guessing in here is maybe a connection to the microphone. Who knows? Only one way of finding out anyway. It seemed to be working, so it looks like we're snipping again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So we have a left and we have a right. And the challenge now, of course, is to get them back together again. See if we can get any sound out of them. And even better, to get a decent quality sound out of them. So I think we're into the next stage now. Now then, here we are. Okay, so if that goes there, then the on this lead that we took off the Scala, the shorter of the two leads is for the left ear and the longer is for the right ear. So let's actually do the right ear first of all, I think, because that's going to be the more straightforward one. So I'm going to attach the, I'm not sure whether to do this is right or not, but I'm going to attach the green wire here to my red dot and see what happens. Right, so this soldering business is not as easy as some people make it look, but finally I've managed to get both my wires on. The green I attached to where I had the red blob, and the copper I attached to where I had the black blob. So let's see what happens, shall we? If we plug into my phone. Okay, so thank you, Johnny Cash. Here's the whistle blowing, and I can hear his voice. So we've at least got a semblance of success there, and hopefully those joints are strong enough to stand the test of time. So we've now got to do the left-hand speaker, and as I mentioned, that's a little bit trickier because we've actually got there were 6 different wires attached to this. And I'm hoping it's going to be that red one, and that black one there. So we're about to find out whether that is in fact correct. Right, I'm rejoining you now after about an hour and a half's worth of faffing around, because what I discovered was on the headphones I took off, there were simply 2 terminals, 1 and 2 wires. When it comes to the Sony headphones, there are 8 terminals. So on one of the sides, on the right hand side, it was very clear because I could see that there were just 2 wires that went in. I took a photograph of those and I simply replaced the Scala Rider wires with the 2 red wires on that right hand side. But on the left hand side, I think it was, there were actually 5 wires going in. And I didn't know which of those 5 were actually carrying the signal from the headphones and which of the other 3 were doing something else. And I've taken a bit of a look on YouTube and nothing really helped there. So eventually, with a bit of trial and error, I actually worked out which was the ground. So I soldered the ground onto one of the ends, and then I just took the loose end and with a bit of music playing through the headphone jack. At this time, by the way, the right speaker was fully operational, so I could hear that, so I knew it was working. But on the left jack, I simply soldered the ground wire onto one of the end posts, and then I took the other wire and just touched it on each of these blobs of solder until I got a sound, and I found actually it was the blue one there. So that seems to have worked. So what I've now done is I've actually got that whole thing working. In fact, let's just give you a little bit of a demo just to prove that it actually is working. So if we just plug something in, let's go for Johnny Cash again, shall we, if we can find him. Presumably you can hear that. Okay, so that's my evidence that it's actually all working. Good old Johnny Cash. Where is he now? Well, in fact, I know exactly where he is now, so I'm looking forward to meeting him again one day. Right, believe me when I say it's now much later, about 3.5 hours later. I think I made a fundamental error, because what I did was, if you notice now, these headphones are actually a lot smaller, and that's because I've got rid of all the extraneous plastic housing that was around them. I didn't realise actually you could pop out these little headphones, because what I'd originally done was I'd had the housing as you saw it a couple of minutes ago. I managed to get the soldering sorted out, so I actually got the thing working, and you've heard that. But essentially the headphone was actually too big, and it was actually painful on my ears when I put it inside the helmet when I sort of did a trial fit on the helmet. So then I got my tin snips out and basically chopped all the plastic away. So furiously I've been using these tin snips to chop that plastic away. And as I did that, I actually discovered these things probably would have popped out anyway. So that was a major lesson. So now essentially they are a lot smaller. I've got the thing wired up. It actually works. And if you notice as well, what I've done is I had some spare of these Velcro pads, which are quite useful, sticking stuff in your car and around the house and so forth. So I've got the scissors out, got the Stanley knife out, and I've actually cut a couple of little pieces to size. So now they actually fit. I pull one of the ear pads out of my Shoei Neotech, and you can see you've got the ear pad there. So all you're going to do is take your Velcro, stick it on, and that's where it's going to sit. Now you can see at the moment that's bare. When I took the Scala Rider ear pads out, they actually had these little foam pads on. Now number one, they've been damaged when I took them off, and number two, they're too small anyway. So I've just gone onto eBay. If you go onto eBay and you just put in the search bar foam headphone replacement pads, just a couple of pounds, and they'll be arriving in the post in a few days' time. But essentially that's it. So job's a good one now. So essentially what we've done today is we've taken the Sony headphone. It's been quite a bit of faffing around because the wiring was quite complicated, so there's been a little bit of soldering. I've had to sort of bodge it a little bit, but listening to it now, it is, when I finally get the thing in the helmet, it is going to sound far superior to these previous speakers. So if you've got a free afternoon and you sort of fancy having a go at a bit of DIY, I would sort of give this a back-to-bike of moderate difficulty. Having said that, if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it. So that's what I've done. It works. It'll be ridden on the bike sometime next week, and I'll give you a bit of a report when actually that takes place. But essentially, I think that's it. I'm very pleased with that. It's a job that I'm halfway through. I was thinking, what on earth have you done starting this? But now I'm actually there, so I'm very pleased with that. Just a bit of a postscript yesterday. I got a bit of a short on one of the earphones, so I had to desolder one of them. Put it all back together again now, and actually, yes, amazingly, it's working. And you can see here as well that I've attached those. I ordered these off eBay yesterday, would you believe, £2, and they've arrived in the post this morning. So it's great because I can stick them on. So they're on, and I also found a little bit of spare Velcro in the garage. So I've got the padding on one side, and I got the Velcro on the other side. So they are now ready to go in. And as we say, east to set up north, jobs are good. And so that's just a bit of a postscript to yesterday. So as with every plan, things don't go entirely according to the plan, but it's always good to have a bit of a plan, isn't it? So So there we are. So I'll hope you like that, and hopefully it will last. So there we go. Cheerio. Okay, so here we go. Test phase. The headphones are installed, and I've got bass. I've got a lot more clarity. Actually feels like I'm wearing a pair of headphones. Actually, the only slight downside is maybe a little bit more pressure on the ear, because I think that's just a function of the slightly thicker earpieces that I've actually got now. But I think, to be honest, those will bed in. Either that or my ears will shrink. So I'm actually very happy with this. So here we are, a bit of an unorthodox end to the video, but yeah, delighted. 5-star, back to the bike, seal of approval. Moderate to I'd say moderately difficult to actually do. It's not technically difficult. It's just one of these jobs you've actually got to stay with, I think, just to keep going. So give it a whirl. No guarantees, obviously, be it upon your own head. Anything you try, don't send me the bill, and let me know how you get on.